Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White and this is Jason's Weird Reads, and today I got another recent reads for you guys in From the Hip style. And if you don't know what From the Hip is, I like to just shoot the shit a little bit before I get into the books I've been reading and whatnot. Just let you know what's going on with my life and everything regarding the channel. And so how about we take a sip of this coffee from my mug here, my Frankenbones mug, which I absolutely love, and we'll get right into it. Alright, so I've been planning to do this video for a little bit. I'm on my holidays. I'm on vacation, and it's been really good so far. I might be drinking a little bit too much, but that's, I guess, okay. Anyways, so that's not the only reason why I haven't been making videos, the drinking part, but my son, he's obviously on his vacation as well from school, and he's 9 years old, and sometimes it's just difficult getting to do this when you have a kid running around. But you know, I had plans. I always have plans for these vacations, and they just sometimes don't happen, and that's okay. You know, it might take. Actually, I'm filming this on Monday, but I was just thinking about it right now that there's a chance I won't be able to post it until like Wednesday, and that'll be like close to 2 weeks after my last video that wasn't a short or a poem reading. So I apologize for that. Hopefully I'll be able to get back into a regular routine shortly. So what have I been up to recently? I've been doing a lot of poetry. Like you may have noticed, I've been adding poetry readings to my channel, and I'm excited to do that. I love poetry, and I've been writing a lot of poetry too. In 30 days, I have written probably close to 30 poems. And I have Pat's Panic to thank for that, because, as I said, she got me reading poetry again. But I also have Matt Wall from I Hate Matt Wall to thank for that. I recently joined his Anarchy crew, and that's partially. Actually, I've written over 30 poems now I think about it, because just the other day I was on a live stream with Matt Wall where we did it was basically like a meetup. I think he posted that one, but we were basically doing like little writing bits here and there. We were crunching some poems. He was giving us like things to draw on, or prompts, and we would write a poem. And so I wrote 2 poems on that, so that would put me over 30. And I also wrote a poem the other day at the beach, so I'm definitely over 30 in 30 days. So that's pretty good. You know, I haven't been writing very much before that, and so writing again almost on a daily basis has been very rewarding. So if you're honestly, you know, if you've been like me and you want to write, but you're struggling to find the time because of maybe all the other things you're doing, not just your day job or your family life. I got this advice about 6 months ago. I think it was someone on TikTok. Yeah, it was Carol Ann Shaw. She said that how she's an older woman. I believe she's in her mid 50s or mid 60s, somewhere in there. And she said that what got her back into writing at that age was writing flash fiction, and she's a really good flash fiction writer. She's coming out with a collection of short stories soon. I'm gonna look up the name of it because I can't remember, and I'll post it down there to let you guys know. It's not horror stories; they're just like slice of life stories. But one thing I love about her short stories, or her pieces of flash fiction anyway, she posts them on her TikTok. Or the little details of life that she adds in there. They really put you in the story. But I digressed. I went on a tangent there. She said that the thing that got her back into writing was writing really short pieces again, like flash fiction. And for me, it's been poetry. And so I've been writing some short stories again now that I'm on vacation as well. And honestly, I have Matt Wall to thank for that. So Matt, if you watch this, thank you so much for everything that you do. It's helping some people, and I hope that that makes you happy. Honestly, I mean, that's all we can do, really, is help other people, right? So I've been writing poetry, and I've also been thinking about self-publishing some of these poems. Matt Wall has his own publishing company. It's called Anarchy Poetic Press, and he releases like monthly broadsides, which is a sheet of paper with poetry on it. And he also does chapbooks and zines, and with poetry in them. And I've been thinking about doing something similar with my own poetry, and maybe moving on later on to maybe publishing other people's poems as well. But I want to get my own poetry out there first and see what the reaction is to that. So I've been thinking about making my own chapbooks, and I would like to know what you guys think of that. Would you be willing to purchase something like that? Something that'd be about, $8-10, 15 to 30 page chapbook that I print out myself and make myself. Would that interest you? Would you buy something like that from me? Please answer deep down there in the darkness. I would really like to know. And so I wanted to tell my own poetry. Like, I'm not new to writing poetry. Back in, this is my story of writing poetry. Back in the 90s, when I was in my early 20s, I wrote like a notebook and a half, maybe 2 notebooks full of poetry. I went through a few years period. Me and my friends, we were all into the beat writers from like the 50s and 60s, and we loved their poetry, and we also loved like Jim Morrison's poetry. I also borrowed a lot of books from the library on poetry. There's one that I remember mostly from an Indigenous woman, and she wrote about her experience as just being a woman. Those poems were brutal. That's why I remember them. So I wrote my own poetry too, and a lot of them were lyric influenced. At least I might have called them that back then. But they were little poems. I've always written in sort of freestyle style, and so like I said, I filled up like 2 books, and then I just stopped writing poetry. I moved on to writing novels and short stories and all that fun stuff, and I kept those 2 notebooks full of poems, hundreds of poems, in my old closet back home where my mom lived. And she had a boyfriend, and because he had serious snoring, sleep apnea problems, he slept in my room, my old room. And he threw out my old poetry. Now, admit it, most of those poems were bad. They were really bad, but some of them were pretty good too. And I remember when I went looking for them, and I couldn't find them, and my mom said he probably threw them out because he went through the closet and threw out a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, why would you throw out somebody's fucking notebooks full of stuff like that? That doesn't make any fucking sense. But yeah, I'm still pissed about it. The guy's dead now, and that's probably a good thing. Anyways, and no, I didn't kill him. He died of natural causes. But I wanted to kill him. Anyway, moving on from homicidal talks. That's my poetry writing story. I started out writing poetry. And actually, that's not entirely true either. When I started writing, I used to write these little weird comics when I was a child, and they were pretty violent. So I watched too many action movies probably because they were like cars exploding and people with guns. And I'd draw pictures and then like have this weird little story going throughout the columns beside the pictures that I drew. And I did that fair amount. None of that stuff survived either, I don't think, anyway. That was a lot of fun when I was a kid. And like I said, that kind of progressed to poetry and then short stories and novels, and I haven't made it very far. but yeah, I want to tackle it all again. And if you are interested in my writing, I do have a collection of short stories on Amazon. It's called Isolation Stories by Jason White, and you're free. There's links actually down there to my Amazon store. But anyways, besides that, I want to start publishing short stories. I have a collection of short stories I want to publish now, but the editing is intimidating the hell out of me. Anyways, that's I guess my writing story, and I want to, of course I want to write more, but I think the power is flashing here. Okay, maybe not. Anyways, oh no, a light bulb just burned out. Okay. Let's move on to the reading bit, shall we? What am I currently reading? Well, it's been this reading year has been very interesting, to say the least. It's been interesting because it's been very good. I've absolutely loved a lot of the books I've read this year, but there's been some clunkers too. And some of these clunkers ended up in this recent reads. But I'm going to start off with what I'm currently reading. Now, before I went on my vacation, I started My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and for some reason, I'm listening to the audiobook, and for some reason, I stopped listening to it once my vacation kicked in, and I think it's just because it's on audiobook, and I generally read that at certain times that involve work, and that's why it kind of stopped. So I need to work it into my vacation, so I'll either work on that. Actually, I think I put it on hold. I'm going to go back a chapter or two so I don't forget what's going on. And I'm going to continue it. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. And I want to get back to it as soon as possible. It's about two best friends, two young women who are in high school, but they meet in like preschool, I think. And they're not friends at first, but they become friends pretty quickly due to birthday parties. And then they age a little bit throughout the book until where they're teenagers. And there's one night where they decide to try taking some acid. The light bulb just came back on. That's weird. They decide to try playing around with psychedelic drugs, and so they take acid. And I think they got ripped off because the acid doesn't seem to work, or does it? Because one of those two best friends goes missing in the woods. And when they find her the next morning, she's not the same. And that's pretty much where I am. A little bit before that, but I want to go back to where that part is because that's what I remember the most when I go back to it, which should be soon. I ended up taking a break from it to listen to another book that has my attention, and Sin from Sin's Book Nook. She recently wrote a review on this book, and it really intrigued me. One reason is because it's by in the heavy metal world, there's this producer who's really well known. His name is Rick Rubin, and he wrote a book about creativity and creating things, and it's called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. And I've listened to about an hour of it so far, and it's read by Rick Rubin, and he reads it very well. Now, I was talking to Sin about this book in the comments of her video, and I said, this looks really interesting. And she said that, yeah, you might like it because it has a lot of Eastern sort of spirituality influences to it, and it totally does. The audiobook even has, like, if you go watch like some talks given by Thich Nhat Hanh over on the Plum Village app or on the Plum Village YouTube channel, and you'll see them have this like bowl that's a bell, and they'll ding it for meditation times. Like they'll ding it during meditation to help bring you back to where you are and your awareness, and they'll ding it 3 times at the beginning of a meditation and at the end. And what Rick Rubin does at the end of each chapter, he dings the bell. It sounds exactly the same, and it's pretty neat. But he doesn't go on about Eastern spirituality necessarily. He mentions it, but he also mentions like you don't have to be a spiritualist at all. This is just his take on creativity, and he likes to argue that it is a spiritual journey, and that everyone, even the most mundane person who goes and works a 9-to-5 job, is a creative person, and that they're continuously creating things. And his argument for that is like you have to talk, you have to communicate with people, and in order to do that, you have to create. So, but of course, he goes into deeper things about creativity, and it's very fascinating. One thing that I find fascinating about it bands who've worked with Rick Rubin, the heavy metal bands. Like, I think Slayer did an album with Rick Rubin, and they didn't get along with him at all because he basically went into the studio for the first day of recording, and he told them a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to assume that the stuff he told the people in Slayer was a bunch of this stuff that's in this book. And then he left, and he didn't come back. And they were like, "Where's our producer?" And they got quite pissed off at him for that. And they probably, his lesson that he told them, or whatever it was, his advice, probably fell on flat ears with guys like the guys from Slayer. They were probably like, huh? But that's interesting because Rick Rubin, he's helped produce a lot of really acclaimed albums, and so that's fascinating. And also, what I just started last night is a book called Bad Moon Rising by Louisa Collin, I think it's pronounced. I hope I pronounced that right. I hope I pronounced it right for a few reasons, and one reason for that is she's going to be a guest on my channel in August, so look out for that. We're going to be talking about this book. It's going to be released August 11th by Cemetery Dance Publications, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I went to bed thinking I'd only read one chapter because I was tired, and I ended up reading like 3 or 4 chapters and about 10% of the book. So I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy the writing. The prologue, the first chapter, or the prologue, whatever you want to call it, it's called a prologue, so we'll call it a prologue. It could actually be broken into a poem, honestly, a very dark and weird and twisted poem. Let's just say that. I'm enjoying myself with this book. I'm so glad that I ran into Louisa Collin, and that we're going to be talking very shortly, because I'm getting the feeling that this book is going to be a favorite, maybe. All right, now, what I have been reading and what I thought of these books. So I read, I like vampires, and I like reading about vampires, and so I've been, ever since this book came out a few years ago, Mouth Full of Ashes by Brianna Morgan, I've been wanting to read it because it was often compared to The Lost Boys, and there's certainly a lot of Lost Boys stuff in this book. But honestly, this book just wasn't for me. Instead of Lost Boys, despite all the references and even some of the lines that the author kind of added in there to give you that vibe, this book read more like a book from Twilight, honestly, and it wasn't full of the type of vampires that I like. And I also felt like the characters were a little bit underdeveloped. So I ended up finishing this book, and I think I gave it 4 stars, but I think what I meant was like 3.5. It's a well-written book, but it just didn't feel all that well finished for me. But there's a lot of people who like it, looking through the reviews, and so, it's not a terrible book. It just wasn't for me. It's about a young family. I really enjoyed the very first chapters. A family of, or at least 3 siblings are at a beach, 2 sisters and a brother. One of the sisters and the brother are twins, and obviously the other sister isn't. But anyways, they decide, it's a storm coming, so they decide to go home, and on the way they get into a car accident. Like I said, this is the first chapter, so it's not really spoiling anything. And one of the kids in the car is killed in quite a horrific way, and it's awful. So I thought I was in for a treat, but then the book kind of died almost right away on me. And so in order to heal, the mother takes the 2 surviving siblings, and they move to like a beach-like area, and the mother finds a job at a carnival, like those summertime carnivals that go all year or all summer long. And pretty much the basic story of The Lost Boys, if you've seen the movie The Lost Boys and you're familiar with the plot, this book isn't going to surprise you one bit. But it is its own story. that is important to make clear. Like, you can tell that the author really loved The Lost Boys, or loves The Lost Boys, and I'm on board with that. But like I said, this book came off feeling a little bit more like Twilight than it did, with like the kids making bad decisions and knowing they're making bad decisions, but going along with it anyway. And in some parts, they are sort of being mind controlled into doing what they're doing. But it just didn't come off as believable for me. It felt like the characters needed a little bit more work. Everything else was fine though, but the story was just kind of flat for me, and I hate it when I don't like a book, especially with an author that I follow on social media and have respect for. But it is what it is. I'm going to check out Brianna Morgan again. I'm pretty sure she's going to grow into a fantastic writer. I also read Blood and Rain by Glenn Rolfe. I've heard his last name pronounced Rolfe and Rolfie, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Rolfe. I'm not too sure. Anyways, this is like a werewolf book from, like, I think 2015 that he released, and this book is a lot of fun. It's basically a small town werewolf story. I think you really need to just get into it and read it yourself. This book was a little bit confusing though. Although I really enjoyed it, there's, I think, a few things that didn't work for me in this book, and one of them is that there's no real main character. Now, I'm not the type of person to say that when you write a story you have to have a main character or a protagonist, but it helps, The main character, I would say, is probably the sheriff, but he's not in it all the time. The story is about the sheriff and his family, but like I said, you jump around a lot, and the story is fairly short. I think the audiobook is only like 6-7 hours long, and there's a lot of characters too, so it's hard to follow everyone. And it's very fast paced. It's like bang, 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 bang. And it was kind of hard to follow for that reason. But like I said, it was also just a lot of fun. It's like maybe you weren't necessarily meant to follow the characters. And honestly, when it comes down to it, it felt like you were watching a movie instead of reading a book. And I think maybe that was the point. But I kind of wanted things fleshed out a little bit. Things to slow down just a touch so we can get used to who we're talking with. But it's a lot of fun despite that. And I really enjoyed listening to it. I also read The Window in the Ground by Steve Stredd. Now, this is my first Steve Stredd story. If you watched that Try the First Chapter video I did a little while ago, I'll try to remember to put the card up there. There was another book by Steve Stredd that I wanted to... I read the first chapter. Actually, it was a couple of chapters up because they were so short. But I ended up passing on it because it was a winter story, and I'm really looking for more summer feels right now. And this book kind of delivered in that it takes place, I think, in late summer. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It takes place during warm weather. That was enough for me, and I really enjoyed this one. The basic story is this town has this way off, like it takes like an hour or two to travel there, but there's this window in the woods on top of a hill, and it's on the ground, as the title suggests, and looking down into it is a very bad thing. There's like things in there, hellish things that you don't want to see because they will control your mind and basically take you into a hellish realm if you go too far. And the townspeople are like protecting this thing, I guess for obvious reasons. And so we follow a young man whose grandfather decides it's time for him to become a man. And he's only like, I forget how old he is, but he's like, let's just say he's 15. And you're not supposed to go up there until you're 18. There's like this big list of rules that's at the beginning of the book. And they're a pretty detailed list of rules, and you get a feeling that you don't want to go near this window because of these rules. And one of the rules is you're not supposed to be there until you're at least 18 years old. Well, this kid's grandfather thinks it's time for him to become a man, and his rite of passage is going to be going to that window. And it's a terrible, terrible mistake. I'm going to leave it at that. This book is a lot of fun, and it's not going to be my first book by Steve Stredd. I also read Lone Women by Victor Laval. Now, this is another one that actually disappointed me. I I don't know what I was expecting, but I really enjoyed the beginning. The beginning is kind of a mystery. You follow this woman who's leaving her parents, and her parents have been killed. And you don't know if she killed them or not, but she's basically hired a person to run the wagon and take her to another place. The place being somewhere else, I forget where. It's like in Montana. They're offering land free to anyone who will take them as long as they farm them. And so she's going out there to do that. And as she leaves, her parents are mutilated and they're covered by a blanket, and she sets the house on fire at the back so that by the time they're gone, the whole place will be engulfed and the wagon rider won't see it. I'm going to leave it at that because that's a pretty good setup, right? But then we get to the town or to the land where she's going to live, and there's a whole community there. And I should mention that she has this box, this chest, basically, that's really heavy. And there's something in that chest. And honestly, I should have liked this book more. I listened to the audiobook, and that might have been the problem. I think I need to read Victor Lavelle with my eyes, because for some reason listening to him is a bit of a struggle for me. But I don't know, I just didn't like it. It just didn't do it for me. I can't even explain why. I think I gave it 3 stars. I wanted something more from it, and I think one thing is there's a bit of a creature feature. I didn't really like the creature. It should have been, I think it might have been more interesting to me if what was in the box was left as something a little bit more supernatural and not a creature. And I hope I didn't. I probably just spoiled that for you, and I apologize. So I guess I'll put a spoiler marker down there, letting you know that I'm about to spoil this. And when it's gone, you can just go away, or when it's gone, you can come back. But yeah, there's a monster in that crate, and things happen with that monster. It's just, I don't know. I guess expectation often ruins things for you, and I think that's what ruined this book for me. I was expecting it to be something else, and it turned out to be this monster, which is kind of a cool monster, but it's not what I wanted, and so I just kind of through the rest of the book. And that happens sometimes. I also read Dead Man's Road by Joe R. Lansdale, and this is another one that I wasn't a big fan of. Basically, this is 5 short stories, I think it's 5, of the same main character, who's this badass supernatural monster hunter. And each 5 of these stories is a different case. It's a Western, and they just came off as a little bit juvenile for me. I just couldn't get into the stories. There's one story I did like, and it involved werewolves, funny enough. That one was a lot of fun, but every single other one, I just kind of, I don't know. It's Joe R. Lansdale. I should have liked it better. But I think it's early Joe R. Lansdale. So that is it for the fiction. But I also read a couple of poetry books that I want to talk about. I was talking about Matt Wall at the beginning of this long video, and I decided to read his book of poems, The End of Everything. And this book of poetry takes place, it's autobiographical. It takes place from 2019 to 2020, I believe. And it's basically him going off his antidepressants. And that's one reason why I really resonated with this book. Because, like I said, it's a book of poetry, but it does tell a story. There's a thread of stories throughout. And this book of poetry is very, it's at times funny and other times desperate. And there's some things in here that Matt shares with us that you don't know why he would want to share this, but if you watch his channel, then you get it. He wants to be honest. He's very honest with these poems, and some of them are crazy. Let's just say that. But overall, I really loved this book of poetry, and I resonated with it. I identified with this book when I went off my meds in 2021 to 2022. It was a mistake when I did that, and Matt Wall realizes that he made a mistake too within this book of poetry. It's a trip, you know. It's a dark trip, and if you're on antidepressants, I would say stay close to your doctor if you want to get off them, and stay close to your doctor after you've gone off them, because you might not even notice that things are changing and that you're acting weird. That is to be expected. And published by Matt Wall's publishing company or press. He published a book on Amazon that you can get on your Kindle Unlimited if you're a member of that. It's called Monsters in the Mouth by Bunny Wild. I read these. These are also very personal poems about a young woman. Just basically all the shit you go through as a young woman. And, you know, most of the poems I've read by women are often very horrific, especially when it comes to relationships. And, you know, what it comes down to is men generally treat their women pretty awfully. And Monsters in the Mouth goes into a lot of that, but it also goes into Bunny Wild's own flaws as a human being. Her wants and her desires and her failures and her disappointments. And it's an incredible piece of, or not piece, but a book of poetry. All right, so I think I've rambled on long enough here. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, please leave me a stack of books down there in the darkness, and also please let me know if you'd be interested in reading some of my poetry that I would mail out to you personally. It'd be made by me. I would fold it up and staple it and everything. Let me know in the darkness about that as well. Thank you for watching. Keep being safe and keep being creative. And I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.